$1 trillion to our deficit between 2013 and 2022. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the article from Politico into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Under the majority's plan, the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimates that all government spending except for Social Security and paying down the debt will have to be cut by 1/3 in order to balance the budget by 2040. This draconian approach means that seniors and the poor will receive worse health care. Our children will continue to learn in crumbling schools, and we will all travel as usual on failing transportation network with bridges that are substandard and roads that are cracking, that is inefficient and totally out of date. This vision does not reflect the ideals of a better America, nor the hopes for a brighter future. It is neither a reflection of the values that I hold dear nor the values of the people whom I represent. I join many of my colleagues in supporting the Democrat alternative being offered by Mr. Van Hollen. The Democrat alternative budget supports the creation of jobs in the high-tech and construction fields. It invests in our future by prioritizing education, as we must, also prioritizing health and the economy, and reduces the deficit through responsible spending cuts based with revenue raised by having everyone pay their fair share and by closing corporate tax loopholes. The Democrat alternative is a thoughtful, balanced approach, one that does not place the entire burden of sacrifice on the backs of seniors, the poor, and the middle class. I urge my colleagues to oppose the misguided and dangerous proposal before us and instead consider one of the numerous alternatives that protect the middle class while reducing our deficit in a responsible way, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Georgia.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume to say that I think the gentlelady from New York is right on target. I mean, these budgets are moral documents. They talk about our priorities as a people. As a people. You know, I tell folks back home, Mr. Speaker, and we don't have any young people in on the floor with us today, but for all those young folks who are entrepreneurs, Mr. Speaker, who want to go out and they don't want to work for the man, they want to go out and hang out their own shingle, run their own business. You know, if they lost at their small business, beginning on the day Jesus Christ was born, $1 million a day, and they lost $1 million a day at that small business every single day, from the day Jesus was born, 7 days a week through today, Mr. Speaker, they would have to continue to lose $1 million a day, every day, 7 days a week, for another 700 years to lose their first $1 trillion. Their first trillion, and the budgets that have been passed by this House and by the United States Senate and signed by presidents of both parties have saddled our young people today in America with more than $15 trillion. Not $1 trillion, Mr. Speaker, $15 trillion and climbing, soon to be 16. So when we talk about the morality of our budgets, we've got to talk about the morality of continuing to run budgets that are unbalanced. We've got to talk about the morality of continuing to pay for our priorities today with IOUs from our children in the future. We've got to talk about the prosperity that we experience today that we're trading away the prosperity of the future to have. Health care, Mr. Speaker. It's going on right across the street. The longest line in Washington, D.C. today is right out there at the Supreme Court. Folks who want to get in and find out what's going to happen. Well, the budget that makes up the foundation of this debate that we'll have assumes the President's health care bill is going to go away. It assumes the Supreme Court justices will accurately conclude that this mandate is unconstitutional, that the whole house of cards unfolds beyond that, and we'll start again. And you know what's interesting, and again, so proud to be a member of this Budget Committee that I do think is doing it better than we have done it in the past under both parties. You know, had the President's health care bill come to the floor of this House, 5 pages at the time, 10 pages at the time, 20 pages at the time, I would wager that this House would have passed the majority of it. In fact, I would wager that the American people would have approved and been enthusiastic about the majority of it. But what has happened in this House too often, Mr. Speaker, is that we take those policies that we can all agree on, and for some reason, unbeknownst to me, we decide that it would be bad if we all agreed on good policy, and so we begin to stuff things in there that we know are going to create controversy. We just manufacture arguments that we don't have to have, and that's what happened with the President's health care bill. There was this nugget of the individual mandate, that theft of freedom, a new definition about what it means to be an American, and we knew that the body wouldn't support that, so we began to add on sweetener after sweetener after sweetener after sweetener. We could have just voted on those sweeteners. This rule doesn't put up with that, Mr. Speaker. This rule says we're not going to try to buy anybody's vote on the floor. We're not going to try to hide the ball in these budgets. Every single member of Congress who has a vision of America, who has a vision of the morality that my colleague from New York discussed, who has a vision of what we could be as a people, if only we had the political will to implement it right here, each and every member of Congress was invited to put that vision forward. There are at least two visions that we'll have today, Mr. Speaker, and tomorrow that I plan to support, visions that I think outline that correct vision of how we can retain America's economic prosperity, how we can continue to be a leader in the free world. But I support bringing to the floor those budgets that I do not believe in. Because just because those folks in North Metro Atlanta, Mr. Speaker, just because those folks in the 7th District of Georgia that I represent don't approve of every budget doesn't mean that those budgets don't deserve a vote. And that is a fundamental difference between the leadership that this Speaker has brought to this institution and the leadership that we've had from both parties in years past. What we've said is every single idea is worthy of consideration. Win or lose. Win or lose, bring those ideas to the floor for debate, and let's see where the votes fall. Mr. Speaker, again, as a member of both the Budget Committee and the Rules Committee, I'm strongly supportive of the underlying budget bill, but particularly proud of this rule that makes every other budget option in order as well, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I am delighted to yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from California, Ms. Capps.
Gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank my colleague from New York for yielding, and Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to the majority's misguided budget. You know, 47 years ago, when seniors were the most uninsured group in our nation, we made a promise that their health care would be guaranteed. And because of that promise, millions of older Americans today have quality, affordable health care, and they and their families have peace of mind. But the majority's budget seems to break that promise by ending Medicare as we know it. Instead of a guarantee, seniors would get a hope and a prayer, otherwise known as a voucher. This voucher, fixed in price, would be worth less and less each year, and health care costs incurred by individual seniors would increase by at least $6,000 a year. Their plan would raise Medicare's eligibility age, delaying the promise of a sound retirement for millions of working Americans. And the bill would whack away at Medicaid, which provides long-term care for low-income seniors and the disabled, and pass the buck to cash-strapped states where its future would be uncertain in tough budgetary times like today. Mr. Speaker, those promoting this plan to end Medicare argue that we have no choice if we want to bring down our deficits. But their plan doesn't bring down health care costs. It just shifts those costs onto the backs of our nation's seniors. And today's seniors will lose important benefits that they currently enjoy, like right today, like access to free preventive screenings and reduced prescription drug costs through the closing of the donut hole under Obamacare, a term I'm proud to use. The plan would weaken Medicare itself. As the voucher program draws off healthier, younger seniors, it leaves behind the oldest and sickest, those the private insurance market won't cover. This plan will cause untold harm to our nation's seniors and their family who today rely upon Medicare for the promise of quality, affordable health care. You know, 47 years ago, we did make a promise that is working for millions of American seniors and their families. We cannot break that promise. I urge my colleagues to oppose the majority's budget, the Ryan budget.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
And I appreciate the comments of my colleague from California, and I know her concern for America's seniors is heartfelt, and it's one that I share as well. And I hope that she will support this rule that allows for a series of votes on many different Medicare solutions. Some solutions are better than others, but even if she opposes the underlying budget, I do hope we'll have her support on the rule, because we do lay out the opportunity for folks to choose among 7 different visions for solving the Medicare challenge. Now, I don't have the charts with me down here on the floor. I know my colleagues from the Budget Committee will bring them during the main debate, but I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, and I can picture the charts in my mind, if you charted Medicare spending going out from 2020 to 2050, that two-generation horizon heading out there, and you charted the President's commitment to spend dollars on Medicare, and you charted the Budget Committee's commitment to spend dollars on Medicare, you'd find that the dollar value commitment is about dollar for dollar going out over that 30-year window. So the question then, Mr. Speaker, is not about how much money is this Congress committing. The question is, to what priorities is this Congress committing that money? Now, the President's budget, which we'll have an opportunity to debate and vote here on the floor of the House, turns those Medicare financing decisions, those decisions about how to save money in the system, over to what we've all come to know as IPAB, the Independent Payment Advisory Board, to make recommendations and suggestions about how to clamp down on costs. Now, generally that means clamping down on reimbursements to doctors. What the Budget Committee budget does, Mr. Speaker, is gives those dollars to individuals so that individuals can enter the marketplace, not a free-for-all marketplace, but a regulated and guaranteed marketplace where policies are guaranteed to these seniors so that individuals can then control those dollars and make their own choices about a health care decision. So just to be clear, we're not arguing about dollars and cents in Medicare. The President's vision and then the Budget Committee's vision, virtually identical. What we are talking about, though, is who controls those dollars. Are they controlled by a one-size-fits-all 1965 Blue Cross Blue Shield plan, soon to be revised by the IPAB board, or are they controlled by my mother and my father and your father and our neighbors, our aunts and our uncles, individuals, Americans, who will make those health care decisions for themselves? Again, for me, that choice is clear. Individual freedom will always be my choice over government control. But getting back to the actual rule, Mr. Speaker, that's what's so wonderful about the way this Rules Committee is operated and this resolution we have before us today. You're not restricted to just voting on my vision of solutions for this country. We're offering 6 other visions as well. In fact, we're offering every single vision that has come out of this U.S. House of Representatives so that we can have a free, open, and honest debate and let the American people know what their true choices for freedom are. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro.
Gentlelady's recognized for 2 minutes. 1 minute.
Thank you. I was just saying to the prior speaker that I have a 98-year-old mother. That's to hand her a voucher and say, go figure it out. That's precisely what you want to do. Go figure it out on Medicare. Unbelievable. 98. She could really figure it out, huh? Chairman Ryan, House Majority have put together a lopsided budget, tries to break the middle class, gouge deeply into our common-sense national priorities, and end the Medicare guarantee. According to estimates, more than 4 million Americans would lose their jobs because of this budget. But they provide a $150,000 tax cut to the richest 1% of people in this nation. The Republican budget would slash the social safety net, cutting the food stamp program by over 17%, or $133.5 billion. That's more than the amount of food stamp funds going to 29 states and territories. Over 8 million men, women, and children would go hungry. If their plan to turn food stamps into an underfunded block grant goes through, even more damage is done. Coming out of the deepest recession since the Great Depression, food stamps helps to feed 46 million Americans, 21 million children. 75% of the program participants are families with children. This is Robin Hood in reverse. It takes from the middle class, gives to the rich. I urge my colleagues to oppose this disastrous budget.
The gentleman from Georgia.
I thank the Speaker, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
And I'd like to say to my friend from Connecticut, because I can see her passion, again, I know it comes from the heart, your mother will be in no way affected by the budget that we're voting on today. And I would like to make that clear if anybody else is concerned about their mothers. You know, for folks who are age 55 or over, there's not one word in the Republican budget plan that changes the commitment that we've made to folks over the past 3 or 4 decades. That commitment since 1965 remains as solid today and tomorrow under the Budget Committee budget as it has ever been. Now, the alternative, Mr. Speaker, is to take our 98-year-old mothers and turn them over to IPAB. Now, again, there are choices here. The Republican budget, which has become the House Budget Committee budget, allows everyone in the current Medicare system, and those 55 years of age or older, to experience no changes whatsoever to that program guarantee from 1965. The alternative, because the dollars still have to be regulated, we still have to protect this program that's important to so many of us from bankruptcy. The alternative is to turn it over to this government board and let them cut costs where they can. Let me just tell you a story, Mr. Speaker, if I can just take a moment of personal privilege. I was talking with a physician from back home in Gwinnett County, my hometown. He's a neurologist, Mr. Speaker. He's been practicing neurology for 17 years, and he's the youngest neurologist in the county. This is one of the largest counties in the state of Georgia, which is one of the largest states in the nation. And we don't have one new neurologist coming into our area in 17 years. And this doc says he's thinking about getting out. Got an uncle who's a primary care physician down in South Georgia. He's the only one to accept Medicaid, Mr. Speaker, in a 5-county radius. Folks say that there is this guarantee of health care. Let me tell you, if you can't find a doctor who'll take you, your insurance card isn't worth much. What we have to do, Mr. Speaker, is restore the promise of America's health care system. What is it about the American health care system that's driving our doctors into retirement? Is it that we're not clamping down enough, Mr. Speaker, and if only we have the IPAB board clamp down even more, that's going to increase access to care? I tell you that it's not, Mr. Speaker. You know, there are lots of different ways to prepare budgets, and I didn't know what to expect when I got on the Budget Committee, Mr. Chairman, I'll be honest. It could easily degenerate into a political exercise. I've seen it happen. It could become about all the right talking points and all the right focus group conversations and have nothing to do with how we should actually lead this country forward, but not so on the Chairman Paul Ryan Budget Committee. In meeting after meeting, in conversation after conversation, in argument after argument, this Budget Committee chairman said there is one way to do a budget, and that is a budget with honest numbers and honest priorities that lay out in plain vision for all to see our vision of America's future. And he did it. He did it. He did it with the help of a very competent Budget Committee. Again, as I look to my friend from Wisconsin with whom I share the bottom dais there in the Budget Committee, did it with lots of input and lots of conversation, but did it in a way so that no one would say they're just gaming the numbers, so that no one would say this is just all about politics, so that everyone who comes to the floor of this House can vote for this House Budget Committee reported budget with the pride of knowing it was put together with integrity about a vision for a better future. Now, again, we were going to have 6 other competing visions, Mr. Speaker, and I can only hope that those numbers, those charts, those graphs were put together with the same care and integrity that Chairman Ryan used in the Budget Committee. But for folks who are trying to make up their mind about where they're going to cast their vote today, again, I urge strong support for this open rule that allows for complete debate over all of these alternatives. But I also encourage my colleagues to give a look at the work product that we created in the House Budget Committee, a work product that I believe, Mr. Speaker, is crafted in a way that can make every member of this body proud. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I'll offer an amendment to the rule to provide that immediately after the House adopts the rule, it will bring up H.R. 4271, a bill to reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act, or VAWA. This is a vital law that I co-authored with Pat Schrader in 1994. and have been an original co-sponsor of each time it has been reauthorized. Since VAWA's enactment in 1994, the cases of domestic violence have fallen, and over 1 million women have used the justice system to obtain protective orders against their batterers. To discuss this proposal, I am pleased to yield the sponsor of the bill 5 minutes, the gentlewoman from Wisconsin, Ms. Moore.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Representative Slaughter, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. I urge my colleagues to vote no on the previous question to allow us to consider the Violence Against Women's Act. You know, it is pathetic and it is disappointing that it's come to this, that we have to use a procedural shenanigans to talk about an initiative that has been a bipartisan initiative since 1994. The violence against women in this country is not levied against just Democrats, but Republicans as well. Not blacks or whites or Hispanics, but against Native people as well. Not just Christians or Muslims, but Jews and non-religious people, atheists. Not just rich people or poor people, but middle-class people, and not just against heterosexual women, but homosexual couples. It knows no gender, it knows no ethnicity, it knows nothing. And I'll tell you, violence against women is as American as apple pie. And I know, not only as a legislator, but from my own personal experience, domestic violence has been a thread throughout my personal life, up to and including being a child repeatedly sexually assaulted, up and to and including being an adult who's been raped. I just don't have enough time to share all those experiences with you, but I can tell you that when this bill came out of the Senate Judiciary Committee with all of the Republican senators, all of the guys voting no, it really brought up some terrible memories for me of having, you know, boys sit in a locker room and sort of bet that I, the egghead, couldn't be had. And then the appointed boy, when he saw that I wasn't going to be so willing, completed a date rape and then took my underwear to display it to the rest of the boys. I mean, this is what American women are facing. And I'm so proud to be an author of this amendment because it has been in the past a bipartisan bill, which this bill will strengthen the core programs to support law enforcement, prosecutions, and judicial staff training. It will include new initiatives aimed at preventing domestic violence-related homicides that occur every single day in this country. It would extend authority to protect Native American victims on tribal lands. It would ensure a strong response to insufficient reporting and services for victims of sexual assault. It would increase the number of U visas for undocumented women who, because they're in the shadows, are particularly vulnerable to domestic violence. And this bill would expand services for underserved communities, those that due to their religion or gender or sexual orientation have not been served. This is not a partisan issue, and it would be very, very devastating to women of all colors, creeds, and sexual orientations for us not to address this. And I yield back to the gentlelady from New York.
Gentlelady continues to reserve. Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume to say to my colleague from Wisconsin that her words are always among some of the most powerful that we have in the Budget Committee. And I don't believe I've ever heard her speak from a place that was not of conviction. And I want to say I appreciate those words. And you have my support on the Rules Committee. If we can get that bill reported out of Judiciary, I would love to see that in the Rules Committee and love to see us report that to the House floor for that same kind of free and open debate that we're having today on the Budget Committee. And I appreciate the words that you shared. I must say, though, Mr. Speaker, I have a tough time connecting the Violence Against Women Act with these budgets. And I will disagree with my colleague from Wisconsin to encourage folks to support the previous question so that we can have this budget debate. Should we have the debate that my colleague is discussing? I believe we absolutely should. And again, I know the committees of jurisdiction are working on that, and my hope is that they will report that and send that to the Rules Committee. But today, Mr. Speaker, we have an opportunity. It's not an unprecedented opportunity, but it's one of the rarest of opportunities that we have here in the House, which is to have a debate on the floor that includes every single idea that any of our 435 members have offered as a vision of how to govern this land, of how to set our fiscal priorities, of this morality that is deciding how to spend taxpayer dollars. We must seize that opportunity today. It's one that comes but once a year, Mr. Speaker, an opportunity but once a year to set these priorities. And again, the Rules Committee has provided time not just today but tomorrow as well to make sure that we can thoroughly flesh out each and every one of these ideas and make sure that no one's voice on the floor of this House is silenced. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from New York.
Let me take about 30 seconds just to say that I appreciate what my colleague from Georgia is saying. However, we're not giving a choice whether we're going to do budget or violence against women, but we're going to have an attempt to do both on the rule. What we can do, we'll vote for the budget. When we vote for the rule, we'd like to have the previous question having been defeated so that we can add VAWA to it. That's all we're trying to do here today. It's about to expire. It would be a dreadful thing to think that women and children and other spouses would be growing up in violence because we failed to provide the resources to stop that have been so successful since 1994. And now I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton.
Gentlelady is recognized for 3 minutes.
I want to thank the gentlelady from New York for the consistent leadership she has given this important legislation since it was passed. It took us a number of years to get it passed in the first place. It's never been off her radar screen. And especially to my good friend from Wisconsin who comes forward in very compelling ways to ask that we vote no on the previous question so that we can consider the Violence Against Women Act, which may well expire, making it, I fear, a real target for the Appropriation Committee because the bill shall not have been reauthorized. Mr. Speaker, I visited a safe house last week in my district because I wanted to hear why a woman would make a decision to stay at home with an abuser rather than leave. I'm not sure I understood in my heart why she would assume the risk rather than leave. I'm glad I went. There were 8 women there, different ages, some had children. For the first time, I understood in the most poignant and practical way what a hotline means. I understood what a rape crisis center means when I heard the stories of these women. And then the notion that this bill would expire, the Appropriation Committee would have before it an unauthorized bill which becomes a target in and of itself seemed just too much to bear. And yet the bill has gone nowhere here, at least in the other body. The bill has been introduced. It is a bipartisan bill with Republican and several Republicans as well as Democrats on the bill. Ms. Moore's amendment essentially does no more than reincorporate the Senate bill, which is tailor-made for consideration, because in keeping with the way in which the reductions are taking place, there is a 20%, it's very painful, but there's a 20% reduction in the new act, even though any authorization you would expect to increase. And yet, even with that reduction, we cannot get that bill on this floor, so we must do what we're doing this afternoon. And you want to talk worth the money. There are very few bills where we can show the kind of cause effects we can show here. 50% drop annually in domestic violence, and the reason for that is there's been over a 50% increase in reporting. Women are not afraid to come out because they know if they report it, if you go to my police station, the police will tell you where there is a safe house. Don't leave women out on the streets. Don't leave their children with no place to go. Let us vote no in order to receive this act now, which I think would receive bipartisan support if it were heard this afternoon.
Expired. Gentleman from Georgia.
I reserve my time, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from New York.
Oh, I was expecting one more speaker, but I believe she's not there, so I will be prepared to close. Let me say again to Mr. Woodall.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Pardon?
Recognized for as much time as you may consume.
Thank you very much. Mr. Woodall is a generous and kind man, and I know he understands what we're talking about here today. But my speaker is here. So let me yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Mr. Laura. Thank you. I'm sorry. That's all right.
How much time did you? 3 minutes. Gentlelady is recognized for
I thank the gentlelady. In 21st century America, 3 women die every day at the hands of their husbands, boyfriends, or former partners. Domestic violence causes 2 million injuries a year. Sadly, it is something that 1 out of every 4 women will experience in their lifetimes. This is particularly a difficult problem for young women today. Women between the ages of 16 and 24 have the highest rates of relationship violence, and 1 in every 5 women will be sexually assaulted while they are in college. Even more worrisome, we know that when couples are experiencing economic difficulties, domestic violence is 3 times as likely to occur. Victim service providers have seen an increase in demand since the recession began, while also seeing their funding cut. More than 70% of shelters credited, quote, financial issues for the increase in abuse that they have seen in communities across the country. In 1994, our now Vice President Joe Biden wrote and championed the Violence Against Women Act. In 17 years, it has cut the rate of domestic violence in our country by over half. It is past time to reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act again, and my colleague's amendment would allow us to act now. The bill reauthorizes the programs that have proven to work to stem domestic violence, to help law enforcement and prosecutors do their jobs. This reauthorization enjoys bipartisan support in the United States Senate, 59 co-sponsors. In addition, over 200 national organizations, 500 state and local organizations have urged us to pass this bill. That's the National Association of Attorneys General, National District Attorneys Association, National Sheriff's Association, and the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association. Why? They want us to do this because it helps to make their job easier, and it gives women the tool to be able to protect themselves. Everyone in this chamber wants to see an America where no woman ever has to endure the scourge of domestic violence. The Violence Against Women Act is helping us to realize this vision. We must reauthorize the law so it can continue to help our constituents, and I'm also proud to tell you that the Affordable Care Act, the health care reform legislation, now says that if a woman is a victim of domestic violence, her insurance company can no longer say that that is a pre-existing condition and she can get the kind of health care coverage she needs for doing it. That's the value, one, of reauthorizing this legislation and the value of the Affordable Care Act. I urge you to support this amendment so we can act now. Let's move forward, reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act once again, and I thank you. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Gentleman from Georgia, continue to reserve.
I do, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlelady from New York.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Ms. Laura has just reminded me that when we began the debate on health care, that 8 states in the United States and the District of Columbia considered violence against women to be a pre-existing condition, and a woman who had been beaten to a pulp could not be insured because she was apt to have that happen to her again. And we changed that in that bill. I think all of us, too, are familiar with the phrase, the rule of the thumb, but I'm not sure a lot of us understand what it means. The rule of thumb was the size of a man's thumb and the stick with which he could legally beat his wife. So every time you use that, I want you to remember what that means. Since the enactment, we've all said that domestic violence has fallen over half. The policemen have been trained, the courts have been trained to understand it better. There was a time in the United States when it was simply considered a private matter, and police would not always take away the offending partner, leaving a person again to be beaten one more time. I don't think anybody in the House of Representatives wants this to expire. I'm sure they don't. Everybody has mothers and sisters and daughters, nieces and aunts that you want to protect. This is such a simple thing. It doesn't hurt the budget at all. But we have tried our best to get this bill to be brought up in this House, and we are terrified, frankly. Those of us who spent a good bit of our time in Congress trying to deal with this act. As I've pointed out many times, I've been at this since 1994. It's such a serious thing that shelters for battered women are never revealed as to their location because of fear that the offending spouse will find them and make them come home or other things. We've seen a number this past 5-6 years of spouses being killed. And we always look at what goes on in those houses, and nobody ever realized before what was happening there. More women obviously need to know that there is some place that they can go and some place that they can get help. But let me give you a figure, because we're very much concerned here about deficit and budget and cost. But studies recently released have shown that just a 2-minute screening of domestic violence victims and a yearly checkup, just 2 minutes, can save nearly $6 billion in chronic health care costs every year. The screenings are provided for in the Violence Against Women Act, which trains health care professionals to recognize and address the signs of domestic violence, because obviously most women who are trying to cover it up and simply attempt to live with it are not going to bring it up themselves. But approximately 2 million women are physically or sexually assaulted or stalked by an intimate partner every single year. 1 out of every 6 women has experienced an attempted or completed rape at some point in her lifetime. 1 in 4 women in the U.S. will experience domestic violence in her lifetime. This is terrible. Congress has a responsibility to ensure that rape prevention programs are fully funded, that law enforcement has the resources, that battered women's shelters are open, that victim advocates have the training to stop the violence against women. With FAWA's authorization expiring before this year's end, we are in danger of letting these responsibilities go unfilled. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of my amendment in the record along with the extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
And I urge my colleagues, please vote no. Please vote no on the previous question for all those women who live in fear, for all those children who witness that violence and changes their lives forever, for all those people who are killed, people whose lives are changed so much forever that mentally, physically, they will never, ever be the same. For heaven's sakes, let's reauthorize this bill that does so much for them. I urge everyone in the House to please vote no, defeat the previous question so we continue to provide that support to the millions of women who are victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. I urge a no vote on the rule and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady has yielded back her time. The gentleman from Georgia is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Yeah. I appreciate the comments of my friend from New York. We serve together on the Rules Committee, Mr. Speaker, and we grapple with tough issues on the Rules Committee every single time we meet. There's no easy day on the Rules Committee. Every bill is a challenge because of the different ideas that folks have to make it better. But what I've learned in that time, Mr. Speaker, is that I'm not the smartest guy in that room, not the smartest guy in this Congress, not the smartest guy in my district, that there's a reason we have regular order here in the U.S. House of Representatives, that even a good idea we can make better. I know I have some folks come to me in my district and they say, Rob, why is it you put that hospital funding that we need in the transportation bill? Those things don't have anything to do with one another. Why do you combine those two things? If it's a good idea to pass the transportation bill, let's pass the transportation bill. If it's a good idea to pass the hospital bill, let's pass the hospital bill. But why do you put these disconnected things together? Why do you try to fund a new military procurement program in the environmental and national park funding? Why do you stick those things together, Rob? They don't have anything to do with one another. I actually campaigned on that issue, Mr. Speaker, because I think they're right. I mean, I think that the American people deserve an up or down vote on one issue at the time. And I think my colleague from New York, my colleague from Connecticut, my colleague from the District of Columbia, my colleague from Wisconsin make extremely compelling cases for why we should see the Violence Against Women Act come through regular order. But my understanding is, and I'd be happy to be corrected if I'm mistaken, my understanding is the bill was just introduced yesterday, that it hasn't had an opportunity to go through those committees where folks know so much more about these issues than we do in the Rules Committee or in the Budget Committee, that it has not had an opportunity to be amended and improved, to have the opportunity for those members for whom this is a heartfelt and compelling issue to put in their 2 cents to make it even better. And I think it should have that opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I encourage folks to vote yes on the previous question so that we can move forward to debate these budgets today. And then I urge my colleagues, and let me say it, Mr. Speaker, because I know folks are watching us on the screens back in their rooms. Do we know what the bill number of the Violence Against Women Act is? 4271. It's H.R. 4271, Mr. Speaker. And there's no question that because this is a House where folks believe in regular order, that the more co-sponsors a bill accumulates and the faster it accumulates them, the more likely it is to end up on this floor in haste, rapidly, immediately, in order to have a hearing. So I would encourage my colleagues to go and look at that bill. Again, just dropped yesterday, but certainly something that I know this House and the Judiciary Committee and others are going to want to consider. The opportunity we have today, though, Mr. Speaker, with this rule, is to define our national vision. And I don't mean our vision for just the nation, our land, Mr. Speaker. I mean a vision for us as a people. Who are we as a people, Mr. Speaker? I heard one of the presidential candidates speak the other day, and they said, you know, this year we don't need politicians that we can believe in. We need politicians who believe in us. I thought that was pretty profound. I don't need somebody I can believe in. I need somebody who believes in me, and that's true, Mr. Speaker. We lay out all of these different competing budget visions here, the summaries of which I hold in my hand, and my question to my colleagues is, which of these visions do you believe believes in you? Which of these visions lays out that future of America that is best for you and your family, that is best for your constituents and their families, that's best for your state, that is best for our nation? And the visions are starkly different, Mr. Speaker. Again, the base bill is the bill that we reported out of the Budget Committee. That's the base text. These are substitutes for that. For example, we have a bipartisan substitute, Republican Democratic member of the House, that raises taxes by $2 trillion more, $1.8 trillion to be perfectly accurate, $1.8 trillion more than the Budget Committee passed budget does, and spends $3.1 trillion more, focuses on different priorities. Debt increases by about $1.4 trillion. That's the cost of those priorities. Again, some priorities may be worth that cost. We'll have that debate on the floor. The ranking member on the Budget Committee, Mr. Speaker, the gentleman from Maryland, his budget substitute also raises taxes by $1.8 trillion over the next 10 years, more than the House Budget Committee budget does, and spends $4.7 trillion more than the House Budget Committee budget does, and thus adds $2.9 trillion more to the backs of our children. As I said, Mr. Speaker, about $15.5 trillion today, soon to be $16 trillion that we've borrowed and spent that we have impoverished our children with so that we can live today at the standard of living that we have, Mr. Speaker. $15.5 trillion. The gentleman from Maryland substitute increases that by $3 trillion more than does the House Budget Committee report. Do the priorities that he spends on merit that kind of increase? Do the priorities that he focuses on merit that kind of debt increase? Perhaps they do. We're going to have that debate on the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker, and it's wonderful that we can. The Congressional Black Caucus substitute raises taxes by $6 trillion over 10 years, more than the House budget bill does. And it spends $5.3 trillion more, which means the Congressional Black Caucus substitute actually reduces the national debt more than the House Budget Committee does. Now, it does so by raising taxes $6 trillion, only reduces the debt by under $1 trillion, but that's one of those priorities that folks have had the courage to lay out here on the floor of the House that we're going to make in order. My colleague from New York, the chairman from California, this Budget Committee of men and women, Mr. Speaker, has made every single option available. The Congressional Progressive Caucus, Mr. Speaker, their proposal is to raise taxes by $6.8 trillion more than the Republican Budget Committee budget, the Budget Committee, the budget that was passed out of the entire Budget Committee. Increases spending by about $6.6 trillion, one of the highest spending of the bunch. Again, focusing on priorities that all 435 members of this House deserve an opportunity to hear and an opportunity to consider. We have an opportunity in this House, Mr. Speaker, to do great things. We have an opportunity in this House to stand up for the priorities that are the priorities of our constituents back home. And we don't have to vote on 100 different ideas in one bill, Mr. Speaker. You know, in the 15 months I've been here, Mr. Speaker, all but about 5 of the bills have been short enough for me to read. I don't have to staff it out. Don't have to have a team of speed readers out there working through it. All but about 5 have been short enough for me to read. I think that's a great source of great pride for me on the Rules Committee, because I told folks back home, folks believe it back home, that we ought to have time to carefully deliberate each and everything. Folks are tired of 1,500-page bills. Folks are tired of 2,500-page bills. Folks are tired of the defense bill being merged with the transportation bill, which is merged with the health care bill, which is merged with the national parks bill, which also funds the White House. That's crazy. And it doesn't have to be that way. There's not one rule of this House that requires that nonsense to go on. In fact, the opposite's true. The rules of the House are actually created to prevent that from going on, and we have to work really hard to pervert the process in a way that makes that possible. This Speaker has made an effort, unlike any I've ever seen, to try to have one idea at the time down here on the floor of the House. One idea at the time so that the American people's voice can be heard. If we bring a bill to the floor, Mr. Speaker, that supports dog catchers on the one hand and hospital funding on the other, and somebody votes no, what are they voting no on? They vote no on the dog catchers, they vote no on the hospitals. You can't tell. And that's what happens. Have you seen that? You ever wondered why it is, Mr. Speaker, that in our appropriations process, the food stamp language and the agricultural subsidy language is in the same appropriations bill? I always wondered. And I started thinking about it as I watched the votes go up on the board, and what I figured out is that we don't have enough farmers in this country for everybody to vote to increase farm spending, and we don't have enough folks with high food stamp populations in their district to support having high food stamp spending. But when you combine those two groups together, guess what? You get 51% of this House. You can make things happen. Well, I guess I support the ingenuity of folks who find ways to cobble a multitude of ideas together and find 51%. But I ask my colleagues, is that really what our constituents sent us here to do? Is cobbling together multiple ideas just trying to game the system enough to find your 51%, Mr. Speaker? Is that really what our framers intended? Or alternatively, should we commit ourselves to not just having an open process, Mr. Speaker, but an open process on a single idea? You know, what I found on the Rules Committee, and it was a surprise to me, and if you hadn't had a chance to serve on the Rules Committee, it might not be intuitive to you. But when you bring a small bill to the Rules Committee, when you focus on one single idea, when you find one priority that you want to make the law of the land, and you send that to the Rules Committee, Mr. Speaker, then the amendment process is only open to amendments that are germane to that underlying idea. You bring a bill about hospital funding to the Rules Committee, well, the only germane amendments that will be considered are amendments that have to do with hospital funding. And so the shorter we make these bills, the more single-minded we make these bills, the more open we can have the process here on the House floor. 435 of us. You know, Mr. Speaker, this freshman class is full of a bunch of CEOs from the private sector, folks who ran for Congress because they were worried about the direction of this country, and they said, dadgummit, I've got to step up, I've got to run, I've got to be a part of the solution. And they get here thinking that they were going to be able to do it all overnight. Turns out there are 435 of us, and we all have the same voting card. It's harder. Nobody's king of the world in here. It's one man, one woman, one vote, and there are 435 of us. You've got to find that agreement. Well, it turns out there really is a lot of agreement, not just agreement on the Republican side of the aisle, not just agreement on the Democratic side of the aisle, but agreement across this whole House when we open up the process and allow the House to work its will, Mr. Speaker. That is what we have here today. We have a rule that opens up the process, that flings open the doors of democracy and lets every single idea be considered, Mr. Speaker. I encourage an affirmative vote on the rule, and I move the previous question.
The question is, since all time has expired or been yielded back, is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
May I request the yeas and nays, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, the yeas and nays have been requested from the gentlelady from New York. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 8 and Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on the ordering the previous question will be followed by 5-minute votes on adopting House Resolution 597, if ordered, suspending the rules with regard to H.R. 1339, and agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the Journal, if ordered. This is a 15-minute vote.
There are 7 budget plans that have been offered in the House. This is a procedural vote, the last chance to change the rules that will guide debate on the 2013 budget. If this is defeated, the Democrats will have a chance to add a measure to the bill to extend the Violence Against Women Act, which expires at the end of the year. The rules allow for debate on all of the budget proposals, all 7. We want to hear from you, get your reaction to what you've been hearing in the debate so far. Democrats call 202-585-3885, Republicans 202-585-3886, and all others, independents, 202-585-3887. While you're calling in, we're going to hear more from a reporter on the various plans.
Jonathan Nicholson with BNA News covering the budget debate. What's the purpose of a budget resolution?
In its most general form, it's to lay out expected spending, revenue, and deficit and debt levels for coming years. On a practical level, probably the most important thing it does is to lay out a top-line number for the appropriators to divvy up for the annual discretionary spending, the stuff that's outside of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, stuff like that.
What are some of the highlights in the plan put forth by Budget Committee Chairman Paul Ryan?
It's very much like last year's plan in many respects. It actually comes closer to reducing the deficit, although it still adds about $240 billion over 10 years compared to just simply current law, which would let the tax cuts expire and the sequestration go into effect. The across-the-board cuts are supposed to start in 2013. But it's probably the most aggressive among sort of the mainstream budget plans out there. Includes a Medicare overhaul, includes a change in tax rates, a simplification of the tax system, But even doing all this, it still doesn't show a surplus until 2040. But it serves as a good, as the Chairman Ryan has talked about, as a good sort of contrast to Democrats who over in the Senate have not passed the budget in quite a while.
Well, in addition to the Ryan plan, 6 alternative budgets are expected to be debated in the House between today and tomorrow. What are the ones to watch for?
There's sort of the usual suspects, the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, the Republican Study Committee. Those caucuses usually put out their own budgets each year. This year's a little bit interesting. The first one that will come up for debate will be one by Mulvaney, which is an attempt to put the budget submission by President Obama back in February into the form of a congressional budget resolution. So there can be a roll call vote on that. But the most interesting one to me is the Cooper-LaTourette resolution, which is an attempt to put into budget resolution terms the approach taken by the Presidential Commission back in 2010, the so-called Simpson-Bowles Commission, and it attempts to set up in sort of broad terms, because again, these are more resolutions that kind of more sketch a general outline of fiscal policy than actual specifics. But it attempts to do sort of a 2/3 spending cut, 1/3 revenue approach to deficit reduction. That approach, the idea that all things should be on the table, spending and revenues, was endorsed in a letter to the super committee last year by about 100 members of the House, members of both parties.
Well, the House is spending today and tomorrow on the budget. What about the Senate? Are they working on their own budget proposal for next year? Senate
Majority Leader Harry Reid has said that because last year's debt ceiling deal, the Budget Control Act, set a top line, a limit of $1.047 trillion for discretionary spending for this year, for this upcoming budget year, FY13, that there's no need to do a budget resolution of their own over in the Senate. So he does not anticipate bringing one to the floor. There's a whole bunch of parliamentary issues involved there, which basically, if he did bring one to the, if he did have a debate, there's a lot of politically tough votes that could happen. So Republicans have accused him of trying to shield his members from tough votes. However, in committee, Chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, Kent Conrad, has said that he will, at some point, try to mark up a budget resolution in his committee. So there would be some committee votes. But again, the main thing is the Senate is not expected to do their own resolution, and they're going to be working from a different top line from what from the House resolution that is expected to pass at $1.028 trillion. So basically, about a $19 billion difference that was going to have to be hammered out by appropriators before the beginning of the fiscal year, October 1.
Keeping an eye on the congressional budget debate, Jonathan Nicholson with BNA News. Thanks for that update.
We want to take your calls about the budget debate during this vote. The numbers are on your screen, 202-585-3885 for Democrats. Republicans call 202-585-3886, and all others 202-585-3887. As we've been talking about this, there are 7 budget plans for the House to consider during debate. A roll call writes that the House floor today will become the Baskin-Robbins of budgets. Every political persuasion has its own flavor, and that members have said they'll double dip and vote for multiple spending plans, but that it's becoming increasingly clear that Budget Chairman Paul Ryan's blueprint is the only one that can pass the chamber. However, it would be a symbolic victory at best, since the Senate is not expected to take up the GOP plan. Our first call is Brian from Lake City, Florida. Hello, Brian.
Yes, I'm just wondering how it is that Harry Reid won't bring up the budget on the Senate floor. I thought he was obligated by law to do so.
Well, he's going to bring up the budget plan that he wants to bring up.
Okay, but he's not brought up any budget plan for over 3 years.
So what would you like to have happen?
I would like to see him at least bring some budget to the Senate floor so that everybody can see what it is they're voting on.
Do you have a preference on which budget you like?
Well, I mean, the Republicans are the only one that's getting down to where they can do something about this deficit that we're under.
So Brian was a Republican. We're going to take another Republican call from Nick from Kingsport, Tennessee. Go ahead, Nick. What's your comment? Okay, looks like we lost Nick there. One of the 7 budget proposals pending in the House is offered by Representative Steve LaTourette, a Republican, and Jim Cooper, a Democrat from Tennessee. It's modeled after the plan written by the co-chairman of the Deficit Reduction Committee, Erskine Bowles and Alan Simpson. That measure calls for $1.2 trillion in tax increases over the coming decade. We're going to watch the House floor now, see a little bit of the vote. A procedural vote here in the House, the last chance to change the rules that will guide debate on the 2013 budget. We have a call from Len, Eddington, Wisconsin. You're a Democrat? Hey,
yes.
Len.
Actually, from what I understand, that the budget proposals that were done in the last session, they set it up in such a way that the numbers would be in place for this year. They gave consideration that it would be a tough year to do this, being an election year, and maybe you could look up this information so we could be refreshed on that better than what it is, rather than the fights that they're going through on the budget for 13. That they did the 12 with a procedural that they would carry these numbers forward into 13 as a basic outline, and maybe you could look that up and get back to us with the information on that so we would better understand what they did in the last session for this matter.
Len, what proposals have you heard that you like or don't like?
Well, basically, the issue on that they were offering for a no vote, my wife was a founding board of directors of a shelter back in the 70s, and all the things that they brought up and the women spoke about, this I hold near and dear, that this really is a no-brainer, and I think that the Republicans would have been wise to say, yes, this is a good bill out of the Senate. There is a slight reduction, but it gives everybody peace of mind going forward, and I think it would have been a good faith effort to move that bill forward. I didn't want to speak to that, but it's something that I personally was involved through my wife's advocacy when she was involved as a director of religious ed, and the pastor said, hey, there's a group starting out, and they were doing bake sales to get stamps to get the word out. And it's just everything that they talked about. About women's issues, that I feel very strongly about.
All right. Well, Len, thank you for calling in. And I wanted to remind you that this is the procedural vote, that if this vote is defeated, Democrats will have a chance to add a measure to the bill to extend the Violence Against Women Act. Our next call is from Dave in Pennsylvania. Hi, Dave.
Hi. Thank you very much for taking my call. My concern is about Harry Reid. I've watched him for the past 3 years not putting out a budget. Now, I don't believe that is right. He won't let any bill come up that he don't think he wants to let the Senate vote on. That's his style. Now, maybe the next president gets in and we take over the Senate, maybe things will change. But this has gone on far too long. They blame the Republicans for everything, and he does nothing but sets back and says, I'm not going to bring it up. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Sure, Dave. Our next call is from Dottie. She's also from Pennsylvania in New Bern. Good afternoon, Dottie. Okay, our next call is from Orlando, Florida. Brett, are you there, Brett?
Yes, I am. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. What do you think about the budget debate so far?
So far, I think Paul Ryan is the only person who's put a plan forward that caps our spending. What we've seen in the past and what's been shown in all the commissions with Erskine Bowles, Rivlin, Domenici, is that we've never achieved the tax increases and also the spending cuts. What ends up happening is the tax increases always come and the spending reductions are always put towards the future, and we've never had that. And now with him capping that discretionary spending, I think is ultimately going to make the biggest difference and why this budget proposal is so much better. Also, with the health care reform, I understand there needs to be a reform, but we also have to give the seniors and those on Medicaid choice. Paul Ryan gives them choice. And he also tackles entitlements. The Democrats are very unwilling to go after entitlements because it's not politically correct. But in reality, it's something that Paul Ryan has stepped out of the boundary to say, this is our biggest budget problem. I'm at least trying to tackle it in a way that gives everybody free choice and makes a difference for the American people. That's why I'm so supportive of this plan. I just want to say thanks for taking my call.
Sure. A call now from Jennifer in Vining, Minnesota. You're an independent, Jennifer, right?
I'm sorry?
You're an independent?
Yes.
So what plan?
And go ahead.
No, go ahead. What do you think?
I was just listening to the previous caller, and I completely agree with him. Paul Ryan seems to be the only adult in the room. I hear the Democrats constantly putting down the Republicans and always saying that they have no plans and it's a do-nothing Congress. Even the president says that. When it's not the do-nothing Congress, it's the do-nothing Senate. Harry Reid does not bring. I have seen, because I watch C-SPAN every single day. I watch the floor on Tuesday, Tuesday through Thursday, the debates in the House and the Senate, and I see all these things that are passed and sent over to the Senate that the Republicans / there's usually always bipartisan, some Democrats voting for it too, and they've already sent over a budget every time they're supposed to, but Harry Reid will not bring anything to the floor that isn't Democratic or liberal for his party, that he thinks that it's not good because he can't have something that the other half of the country wants to deal with. He's just a very party line senator or House or Senate leader, and I'll tell you, I have reached my limit with the Democratic Party because of the fact that they do nothing in the Senate, absolutely nothing. They will not take up any of the bills, and it's not their. It's their country, but it's also the Republicans' country and the Independents' country, and they need to put up every bill that is sent over for a vote by both parties. It's not fair. It's a do-nothing Senate, not Congress, and I agree completely about Paul Ryan. His is the only budget that makes any sense, that puts a cap on all these crazy new services and everything that the Democrats want to start again. They just want to increase government, and I think we need to put a stop to that. And I think you're seeing a change throughout the country that people are getting tired of that, and they want this stopped.
All right. Well, thanks for your call. Deborah is a Democrat from Houston. Hello, Deborah.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my call. I'd like to refute the caller that just got off about the Senate being do-nothing. And I won't call this Congress a do-nothing Congress. I'm going to call them a silly, nonsensical Congress. I mean, no job bills. Everything that seems to come out of here is affirming "In God We Trust" or taking up things that have nothing to do. They're so focused on women's reproductive rights. They really haven't done. And as far as Harry Reid, he's a really good leader. And I'd like to remind the young lady that just phoned in about Mitch McConnell. As soon as Obama was elected, his first and only comment was that they were going to just do everything to make sure Obama was a one-term president. And that was the gauntlet right there. They weren't going to do anything.
Hey, Deborah, we want to focus this conversation on the budget proposals. What are you hearing so far that you like or don't like?
Well, yeah, I'll talk about that, but I was refuting, the other lady talked about that, so I feel like it's my right to refute what she said about the budget.
Sure, go ahead.
I mean, fair is fair. About the budget, Paul Ryan's budget seems grown up to them because he's the only one of them that's not focused on religion and zealotry. He's actually trying to do something. The problem is when they tackle entitlements, they go after the poor. They go after food stamps and Medicaid, but they forget that the corporate welfare is a gigantic part of our budget, and the subsidies and the giveaways. I mean, they want us. I'm on Medicaid and SSI. I'm a cancer patient, and I make a tiny amount of money every month. And I've paid in all my life, but here's the deal. The subsidies and the giveaways, the corporate